you tell I'm in denial?
You can't stay at the top forever.
I was also very surprised when I looked at my phone and saw Joe Girardi dismissed.
Well, I think mine were with common sense.
I think now belongs in the all-time greats top 10.
Boston, I really think only got to this point because of a guy named Chris Middleton being out for the Bucks.
That power play just was unbearable. It was humming.
Man, am I happy. I knew that this was going to happen. I knew he was going to come back.
When I think of New York Yankees now is Judge, probably people in the past when Jeter was coming up.
I would be shocked. A little bit hurt.
Hey, this is Greg Tepper of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, TexasFootball.com, and Valley Sports Southwest. You are listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our MLB Opinions of the Week. Now, playoff predictions are here, but for the first time in our podcast history, we are doing power rankings. And the man with his own separate power rankings in the month of October, Austin.
Yeah, this is... I'm glad we're doing this. I know it was my idea, but I feel like it's different than just regular season power rankings because you have to factor in, I think, how these teams will do in the playoffs. And the playoffs are a different animal for players that we've seen struggle during the season. For example, Trey Turner. Trey Turner is known to be a good playoff player. So I think that kind of factors into my rankings. I'm sure they did for you as well.
Yes, and I think I'll just get it started. This team's bullpen factored into my power rankings, and that's why they're 12, the Texas Rangers.
Are you just doing that to...
No, I'm serious. Like, how in the month of October with the pitching staff, they also have an injured starting pitching. So if I hope they go on a run, but if I'm doing power rankings and they were to face all these other teams, I just can't trust their bullpen. So that's why they're the lowest team in the playoffs for me.
Yes, they are, statistically speaking. This isn't even an opinion. It's a fact. They have the worst bullpen in MLB history for a playoff team. In MLB history. So that's not a good stat to have. I do not have the Rangers at 12. I believe they're better than that, especially because of their offense. But my number 12 is a team that struggled to end the season, that needed to get one win to clinch a playoff berth, but only really clinched because of other teams losing, and that's the Arizona Diamondbacks. They, in fact, did not win the game they needed to. They were playing some young guys, but they struggled to end the year. And that's kind of why I have them at this point. I think I think every team that made the playoffs, because the league is very parity-based at this point, and the fact that we have two teams that have 84 wins in the playoffs, I think is shocking. And the fact that two of them, I mean, even if we went back to the 5 playoff teams on each side, we'd still have an 84 team in the Marlins. So it's weird, but the Diamondbacks just seem like the weakest team to me. I'll go on to my 11. It's the other 84-win team. The Marlins would have made the playoffs in the old way of doing things, and they have one of the best hitters in baseball as Luis Arias, but he has an ankle injury. He should be fine. He will play. I just hope it doesn't affect him. Sandy Alcantara's hurt. They just have too many injuries. I know they have Jorge Soler, which is, I think, a part of the reason why I had them above the Diamondbacks is they have more playoff experience because they made it in 2020. So they have some players that have been in the playoffs. Luis Arias obviously was in the postseason with the Twins before. So they have guys with that experience, but they also have a lot of young guys. So I have them at 11.
I also have the Marlins at 11. For many of the reasons you talked about, I could see them going on a run if their bullpen. I trust their bullpen more than the Rangers. I also trust their pitching staff, and I feel just they're going to shorten the. To me, that's what last year's postseason really told me, or like past postseasons have. What I've gathered from them is you can really shorten your pitching staff, and you can rely on heavier guys, or like the Phillies did with Aaron Nola and Wheeler. Then they just mixed in a third guy, and you had a bullpen. So that's why I have the Rangers lower and the Marlins higher, even though the Rangers have a fantastic offense.
Yeah, and I do think that they have a better a better relief pitching. I mean, it's hard to have worse. But between guys that have been there before, you go to the Marlins as well in their bullpen. David Robertson, a guy that was on the last Yankees championship, so he has experience. He's been to a World Series. He's pitched in a World Series, and so he has a 3.03 ERA. He's played well this year, even though he's kind of struggled with the Marlins a little bit. But I think his playoff experience will be huge. And why do I bring him up? He was on the Phillies last year, and that's who they meet in the first round. I know I mentioned that before in our last in our playoff prediction video, but it will be interesting to see him go against his old team. But who do you have at 10?
So 10 is where I have the Diamondbacks. I kind of believe in Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly. I like that, and I also like their bullpen. And I do think they'll have some guys shine, but I do understand having them as the last team.
Yeah, their bullpen has struggled a little bit more than the Marlins, but their starting pitching, I would say, is better, especially with the injury to Alcantara and Yuri Perez. But it's just the inexperience that we both know that they have. Can they overcome that? That's really the question.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Now we go into our. I'll go into my mind. It's the Twins. When I was talking, this is a team when I think of shrinking their bullpen or shrinking their starting pitching. I know Joe Ryan has struggled in the second half, but you have Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray. And they do have some good bullpen arms. To me, it's just the offense. To me, this offense is very hit or miss. But you do have Carlos Correa. I know he's struggling in the regular season, but this guy has done really well in the postseason.
Yeah, I'll go into my 10 because I hadn't said that one yet, and that's the Blue Jays. I know they're going to be higher on some, but they just have refused to be consistent this year, and now is when you need that. Heading into the postseason, they're 4-6 in their last 10, and they could have gotten a. I guess it wouldn't have been a good thing if they had one more games because then you play the Rays, so you could have avoided being the 6th seed though if you had won the last 2 games and had 91 wins, which would have been more than the Rangers, and the Rangers would be the 6th seed. But that's not how it turned out, and so. I do think the Blue Jays are definitely better than those bottom 2 teams in the NL, but the inconsistencies, I need to see that change before I really believe in this Blue Jays roster. My number 9 is the Rangers. They have an exceptional offense, but injuries to their starting pitching, along with literally not figuratively being the worst bullpen of all time that's made the playoffs. I think it's really hard for me to trust them in any game that goes into the 8th or 9th inning close. There's no relief pitcher that I would trust if I was a Rangers fan, and so that just puts them in a tough spot.
Yeah, and maybe there's some miracle where these bullpen arms, or at least a few, get hot, and then they go on a run. But to me, it's very difficult statistically because they're
you
one
need
of the worst.
you need the majority of your bullpen to be clicking. If 1 or 2 guys gets hot, you can only pitch them every once in a while. I mean, you can pitch them like 3 straight days, but then for those 4th or 5th day, like you don't, and then that's when you are close in the game and you give up a lead. The Rangers are going to have to outscore their problems.
Yep, and it's probably not the first time they've had to do that in the postseason. But yeah, so there's some hope, but statistically speaking, one of the worst bullpens, as we've talked about. That's just insane. Like, I always thought they were bad, but seeing the stats is like, yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah, they're not bad. I mean, they're bad, but they're not bad on to a sense of just this season. No, it's historically bad. Like, this is whenever you're again, it's not hyperbole when I say they are the worst bullpen that's ever made the postseason, and that is concerning.
Less than 50% of the time is their save percentage. It's like 401, I'm pretty sure, or .401, which the last team to do that was the Diamondbacks when they lost 101 games.
Yeah, they are more likely to lose with the lead at the end of a game when it's close, and that is unheard of. I know there's Rangers fans out there that may hate to hear it, but it's so glaring that it's impossible to ignore.
Yeah, no. I'm so happy they made the playoffs. I'm happy. I was watching the game on my phone. I was like, let's go. And then I was done. And I'm just happy. I'm just happy to be here. So yeah, let's move on. Go to. I'll let you go to your 8.
So my 8 is the Twins. I think you had them at
9.
9. You had them 9.
Yeah.
I just really trust their starting pitching off the top 2, and really what I think hammers this home is Yohan Duran. Duran is a stellar closer, and I believe you could pitch him in 3 straight games in the wild card and then move on. And while I don't know how well they will fare in that next round, Duran, along with the experience they have with Carlos Correa, I know he's had a bad year, but there's experience there. The Twins have made the playoffs plenty of times recently. They have guys that have been there, done that. Even though they still have an 18-game losing streak in the postseason. 18 straight games. That is remarkable. But
Yep.
I think that they are still better than some of the teams that are here in the playoffs.
Okay, so it looks like the Jays were your 9, or were they
The
your
Jays
10?
were my 10.
Okay, the Jays are my 8. I have them over the Twins. This is such a tight matchup to me. With the I put the Jays over the Twins because of their hitting. To me, the Twins are more strikeout ish, but you mentioned the Blue Jays being more consistent. So I just trust more of the Blue Jays hitters than I trust the Twins hitters. And I also like their starting pitching, but to me, it's the hitting that puts it over the top for the Twins, or for the Jays over the Twins.
Yeah, I get that. It's just I feel like Carlos Correa is going to come alive. I feel like some of these guys that have had bad years will start to play better, especially being at home.
Yeah, that's fair. So I'll go into my 7. This may be too low. I just don't trust this team. That's the Tampa Bay Rays.
You and I are going to be extremely different on the Rays.
Okay.
My number 7 is the Phillies. You see, they made the World Series last year, but there's reasons why they didn't win the division, why they only won 90 games this year. I do think there's plenty of holes on this roster, and while a guy like Schwarber can hit 47 homers, he also hit under 200. So there's no promise there that he's going to perform on a game by game basis. Aaron Nola had one of the worst seasons of his career with a 4.46 ERA, second or third highest ERA of his career over the 9 years he's played, which is a little bit concerning. Wheeler's always great. I do think Kimbrel will be fine. He hasn't had a remarkably great season, but he also has had a bad year. They have an okay bullpen. It's just they're just an average team playoff wise. I don't see them jumping off the page in any stat or metric too positively or too negatively. I think they could go on a run again because they have those star talents, but at the same time, they have to perform.
Yeah. For the Rays, I'll explain a little bit more. It's to me they have a Rosarena who's been there. They also have just outstanding pitching, but they have guys that have gotten hurt, and I can definitely see them going on a run, but I don't trust it just because while they do produce guys, I do think there's that experience level that I don't really see in this team. Um, so that's where I stand. And now I'm just going to my 6, which is the Phillies, for what you talked about. I have them this high. You bring up a lot of good concerns just because of what they did last year. And I know they struggled this year, but they were. I remember saying I was like, yeah, they shouldn't be in the playoffs. They made it to the World Series, so I think that experience gives them the edge over the Rays. And I was also in this power rankings. I leaned a lot more heavily to the NL on like better teams because the AL to me is open.
Yeah, I get that. I'll explain a little bit more why I have the Rays higher when we get to them. My number 6 is the Astros. I am concerned about how inconsistent they've been as well, but they do have that experience, and that's mainly the reason why they're above the Phillies. While the Phillies do have a lot of experience, the Astros have been there, done that so many years. They've been to so many World Series, made it deep in so many postseasons that I think they deserve it. Even though if I was looking at them in a vacuum, I probably wouldn't have them this high. Uh, I'll go into my number 5. No, my number 5 is the Brewers. Their pitching is elite. It's can their hitting step up? I like the additions they made, like Carlos Santana and some of the other guys they added. Devin Williams, I do think, is the best reliever in the MLB, especially in the postseason. Uh, so I do think they have that talent there. It's just I do think they have the best bullpen of any team that is still alive between Joel Payamps, Hobie Milner, Bryce Wilson. There's just so many guys that are elite, elite, elite. And the fact that they're getting healthy. Christian Yelich had a resurgent season this past year. It's hitting's their problem. The best two hitters, Yelich and Contreras, have started to play well this year, but they're going to need the guys that they picked up and the ones that they trust, because if they don't hit, they can't score and they can't win. And that's a big reason why they lost to the Braves a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So I'll go into my 5 as a team you had at 6, the Astros. For the experience, they have been finicky. That's why they're not the number 1 AL team for me in this power rankings, because while they've been there, done that, you kind of got to put it together. And even then, they've been stumbling and haven't been doing well as of late. I know they got the division, but still, that shouldn't be for a team that dominated. They were pretty close to losing it to a team that was terrible last year in the Rangers. So they're up here because of their experience, and I could definitely see them putting it together. But I'll just go into my 4. The Orioles they've just been the better team this year. I really love their bullpen. I don't love their starting pitching, but I also think they have more consistent guys, and they've just been the better team this year.
Yeah, my number 4. You said your number 4, right?
Yeah, that's the Orioles.
So my number 4 is also the Orioles. They are a team that lacks experience. They have not many guys that have been to the playoffs. I know they have Kyle Gibson, who's played in the World Series. They have Hicks, who's been to a couple ALCSs. But outside of that, they do struggle in terms of that. But when you consider how well they played in the AL, in the best division in baseball still, with still some great guys, it's really just, is Felix Bautista going to be healthy? Are the young guys going to continue to perform in the playoffs? There's a lot of question marks there, but outside of that, I do think this is a great team. I'll go into my 3, though. My 3 is the Rays, and I think they have plenty of postseason experience. Their 2 best pitchers heading into the postseason, Zach Eflin and Tyler Glasnow, have both pitched in the World Series. Zach Eflin last year with the Phillies, Glasnow with the Rays in 2020. And then Yanni Diaz is a 32-year-old who's, again, been there, done that with this team. He's played in the World Series with them. He hit 333 in the World Series with them in 2020. You have Rainier Rosarena, who had tied for the most homers in a postseason, or the most homers in a postseason ever. I just think that this team has enough talent there that's been there and done that. I know injuries will concern a lot of people, but I think they can hit well. And they're a rally-based team. And Yanni Diaz has played so well this year, easily a top 3 or 4 first baseman in the league this year with a 158 OPS plus. And along with, again, Zach Eflin, Tyler Glasnow. I know Shane McClanahan's out, but Zach Little's pitched well. He's a guy that doesn't have that much experience. But when you have 2 top guys that have been to the World Series before, I don't think you get to worry too much about experience. And then they have guys in their bullpen that have also, like Peter Fairbanks, who was there on that team in 2020 that went to the World Series. And they have Jake Diekman, who's been in the league forever. So they have enough experience for me to consider them trustworthy enough.
Okay, that's fair. My 3 is the Brewers. You talked about their concern with hitting, but yeah, I just love this pitching staff, and I think that pitching staff will just be they are so good that they can handle the hitting, and the hitting can just do just enough. This is a team that's going to be heavily reliant on their pitching, but to me, that's just why I have them in the top 3.
Who is your 2?
My 2 is the Dodgers. I know I was a hater on the Dodgers, but going into this, I know differed in the playoff predictions, but they're a team going into this that's very good, and that's what they're at 2. And then I think it's pretty. Who do you have it to? Before I go, do we agree on one?
We agree.
Oh,
It's
cool.
Dodgers Braves, and the only thing that's keeping the Dodgers out of 1 for me is their starting pitching health. I think that Kershaw is still remarkable. His ERA this year is lower than his career average, and for Kershaw, that's still remarkable. 2.46 ERA this year, 13-5 record. He's still easily, when healthy, a top 10 starting pitcher in the league. I know a lot of people won't consider him that because he has injury concerns, but if we're just talking based on talent, there's not many guys I'd take over Kershaw. So, and along with Mookie, Freddie Freeman, all the experience in the world, JD Martinez. But with the Braves, they have a lot of guys that were there. Obviously, Acuna wasn't on that team. I mean, he got a ring, I believe, but he didn't play at all. So he still probably is the guy with the least amount of experience, him and Matt Olson. But they are so talented, so deep that I think they can overcome that pretty easily.
Yeah, they've had an incredible season, so that's why they're at number 1 heading into this. We'll see how it goes. I think there are questions for all this team, and I'm very excited for this postseason. But that's all we got. Thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.